Common mistakes producers make. I would say for new producers, one of the biggest mistakes is owning too many VSTs. I think we all fall to it every now and then. And I know I get to a point sometimes where I might buy, say, 3, 4, 5 new synths, and you end up at a point where you actually only start using one of them because it's only one of them that you've learnt the menu system or the sounds of, or the bits and pieces and the finer details. And I think that's something that I've always tried to advise people is just get one and stick to it, learn it inside out, because that's really when you start to become a bit more creative in your processes and you really start to know your limitations, basically. But yeah, and I think if you get too many too soon, you just get lost in this swamp of new sounds, and it's really difficult to sort of deviate from presets then, and it makes it a lot harder to learn. For getting stuff finished, I heard a quote once, and I can't remember who said it, and I should really find out because I've quoted this a few times before, but someone once said, art is never finished, it's only ever ready. And I kind of live by that rule when it comes to finishing things, in that you can always add in a new hi-hat, you can always change your kick drum, you can always completely revamp your bass line or your top line melody or make some tweaks here and there. But I think if you're asking yourself if it's finished, you're asking the wrong question. It's not really a question of whether it's finished, it's more a question of whether it's ready. And I think for me, my process is, can I play this at my own gig? If I went to a gig tonight, can I play this in the middle of my set and would it stick out like a sore thumb, in a good way or bad way? If you can't finish a track, don't finish it, bin it, get rid, move on. You got to. Yeah. And I live by that myself. Sometimes I always tend to start with a combination of sort of bass line and drums, and develop a groove first as part of my process. And if I can't get further than that, bin it, get rid, move on. It's as simple as that, because if you're struggling to get past that point, it wasn't inspiring you enough to make it further. And I think that's really where we as producers get our creativity, is from our own creativity, and it has this sort of spiraling, rolling effect. So I think, yeah, it's and when I say bin it, don't actually get rid of it to never be seen again. Maybe bring it up in 6 months' time and give it another go. You might find it inspires you, or you might find the fashion or the industry or whatever has changed to a position where this now works or something. Or you might have learnt a new technique where now you know how to treat this sound that it is you're struggling with. For me, I think it's a case of just keep going, keep persevering, basically, and just if you hit a brick wall, just move on. That's a tough one. Fantasy plugin. I'm not sure that I can think of anything that doesn't already exist, but I think effects companies or plugin companies who develop effects, I'd like to see more envelope following effects. So for example, reverb or delay that follows the envelope, whether that be frequency envelope or amplitude envelope or something just that's a bit more creative. And I think there's so many companies out there at the moment, especially in the lines of like DJing equipment. People are bringing out all these mixers and you get a filter, a delay, a flanger, reverb, beat repeat, and it's always those effects. And the same goes for plugins as well. When you get the live laptop DJ plugins and effects units, they all have the same effects. And I just think actually there's a whole world of effects out there that we could be making, whether it be some kind of additive harmonic something or other, or some envelope follower, and there's not so much out there that's just a really creative breath of fresh air. It tends to be very much the same stuff over and over again. It'd be nice to see plugin companies sort of really doing something that's a bit out there but useful at the same time. There are a few that have tried it but failed miserably. My production process is kind of all over the place, really. I don't tend to do the same thing over and over again. Sometimes I think it comes down to what I'm playing with at the time. Generally, I'll start with like Nerve, for example, so a drum machine, and I'll start there and I'll play with some drum sounds. I might develop a loop or a groove, or I might find that by tweaking the parameters of a kick drum or something suddenly makes me go, actually I can make this into a bass line, and I'll really start, and it's all about finding that sort of inspirational moment. But then other times I can be playing with a synth and just flicking through presets to see what it's got on offer, and I'll just start playing some chords and go, actually I quite like those chords with this sound, and I'll take it from there and start developing it from there. And sometimes I might develop an entire breakdown before I've even got to how the drums are going to sound. Right. So it's a bit backwards, really. Which track do I wish I'd written or produced? Don't know, which one made the most money? How else do you work it? How do you define it? I mean, oh man, which one do I wish I had produced? I wish I was in the studio during the making of Mike Oldfield Tubular Bells, because that sounds like it would have been a riot. Frustrating, but a riot. In watching one man try and play all these instruments to poorly synced 8 tracks. That would have been fun. Dance music wise, I'd like to be in the studio working with or watching even people like Noisia or Knife Party or Pendulum. Purely because I mean I really respect their music from a grabbing the industry by the balls and swinging it around viewpoint. That's what they do to a T, and I think they do it both artistically and sonically. So I guess what track would I like to have produced? I guess probably kind of falls under the same category. A lot of the Knife Party or Noisia ones. Because they do stuff I couldn't or wouldn't do, and it's just so out there for me. It's so worlds apart from my sound that, I really appreciate and respect that. Best music production advice I was ever given is probably not just production but industry advice. Pick something and stick to it. When I first started DJing many years ago, I grew up with a family who were into all sorts, from prog rock to jazz to electro to everything. So because of that, I sort of love most genres of music. There's very little that I don't enjoy. And so when I first started DJing, my sets would start off chilled out and end up in raging techno or something. And my productions were very similar at the beginning. And I still like to venture into other new genres and whatever. I've produced loads of dubstep tracks, of drum and bass tracks, of hip hop, of all sorts. I've never released them, I've never shown anyone them, but that's part of my learning curve. But publicly, I stick to one kind of, not necessarily one sound, but one key format, and I keep trying at that. And I think that's probably the best advice I ever got from a DJ, Colin Dale, actually. I think that's, so many people sort of scramble at something and then go, oh, it's not working, I'll scramble at this. And actually, if you stop scrambling and just kept your a solid walk, then you'll get there in the end. The difference between a DJ and producer these days is near zero. And do electronic fans care? I hope not. And they shouldn't either. Electronic music fans should care about electronic music, not who's pressing play or who's using a sync button or who's got the biggest limo or who's got the biggest penis. That's not what it's about. It's about music, you know, and that's really all it should ever be about. When I first started going clubbing, I'd go to a club, I'd dance all night. I didn't care who was playing, you know, and if there was someone who really entertained me that night, then obviously I'd remember their name and maybe go to more of their gigs. But yeah, I think it's a bit of a sad state of affairs if we're sort of purely judging people on anything other than the music that comes out the speakers. And there's a lot of sort of negativity going on around at the moment with the whole sync button this and sync button that, and I just think, well, you know, DJing has evolved. It used to be about beat matching, and it used to be about vinyl and whatever, and if you want to maintain that, then crack on, but good luck finding all the new music on vinyl. You know, it's as simple as that, really. And vinyl at the time, you know, when Technics came out, and or pre-Technics even, and you had pitch control on vinyl, people thought, oh, well, that's cheating. Well, you know, where are we now? There's no such thing as too easy when it comes to production. Yeah, in fact, I mentioned this in the session earlier on, that some people seem to talk about, oh, you shouldn't use loops in your productions, for example. As far as I'm concerned, that's absolute rubbish. House music was built on samples. It was built on loops, you know. Without the idea of using loops and samples, then electronic music wouldn't exist. You know, how do you think you got your kick drums and your snare drums and, you know, all of these sounds? They're all samples. They're all loops. So the technology that we've got today makes all of this a lot easier, and I think so long as you're not just only taking the easiest possible option because it's easy, then I don't have any problem whatsoever if someone has, you know, a track that's maybe only 3 layers of sound and all 3 of those happen to be loops or whatever. If it sounds good, it sounds good. What's the problem with that? You know, if it gets played in a club and people start dancing, mission complete, job done. That's really why we're all here, to enjoy it, isn't it? The one in Birmingham, probably. What's the best BPM? 128, of course.